Well, at this time, it's my pleasure to introduce our final plenary speaker. Dr. Jack Westfall almost needs no introduction, but I'm going to go ahead and give him one anyway. He is a professor of family medicine at the University of Colorado School of Medicine, where he also serves as a senior scholar at the Eugene Farley Health Policy Center. Jack's a member of the NAPCRG board, and in fact, a new position on the board has been created just so we can continue to get his input on patient engagement and community participatory research. Jack's passionate and a tireless advocate for community and patient engagement in research and serves as director of the High Plains Research Network here in Colorado. That will be the topic of his presentation this morning. Jack?
Good morning, you Presbyterians. All sitting at the back. It's an honor to be here. I really appreciate it. Local guy, last day, no travel. So we're going to do a little road trip to eastern Colorado. This is a recent postcard from the small town of Last Chance. It sits at the intersection of two blue highways in eastern Colorado. But I have a few disclosures. I grew up east of Last Chance. I practice family medicine east of Last Chance. The High Plains Research Network and the Community Advisory Council are east of Last Chance. I'm invested heavily in the land and the people east of Last Chance. Sometimes you can rush around and not really see what you're looking for. And so we're going to slow down and take a tour through eastern Colorado and the land east of Last Chance so that we can get a better picture of who's there, what's there, and what do those people do. First, let's head up from Last Chance so you can sort of get a picture of where this sits on the planet. So at 1,500 feet east of Last Chance, looks like a single farm. At 25,000 feet, many of you will see this view as you fly over on the way in or on your way home today. At 10 miles, you can see Denver to the west, the county lines of Washington, Yuma County. At 35 miles, you're here in Colorado Springs. Here is the area east of Last Chance, the High Plains Research Network. So let's head out east of Last Chance on Highway 34. A blue highway, to see the thriving communities of Eckley, an abandoned barn near Cope. We have tornadoes and snow. An old windmill dots the land and the landscape, and an old grocery store in Pritchard selling soda, candy, and cigarettes. And we have wind. In his book about eastern Colorado and the Dust Bowl, Timothy Egan described a new type of mental illness, the person driven mad by dust. Another day of wind and dust and hopes deferred. But it's not only in the Dust Bowl. We have that wind today, as seen in this photograph from just a few years ago. And the home of one of our research assistants. This one takes a minute. Those are tumbleweeds covering her house. The fire department came out and said, "You know, you need to remove those." This part of America looks like it's dying. Our rural past seems so distant, like Dorothy's Kansas and the Wizard of Oz. Yet within this lifetime, the people living today, nearly 1 in 3 Americans worked on a farm. Now the site of the old Dust Bowl is largely devoid of young families and emptying out by the day. It's flyover country to most Americans, says Timothy Egan. So what is east of Last Chance, and is there a paradise? Is it the worst hard times? Is it paradise lost? What do you see from a drive-by or a flyover? What did you see on your way to NAPCRG? An abandoned sod house? Or maybe, just maybe, there's something more. Maybe the first view of that area east of Last Chance and that of Timothy Egan's is really just a sampling error. Perhaps the genuine view east of Last Chance is less a function of where you go and more a function of how long you choose to stay and who you journey with. So let's take another look east of Last Chance through some photographs over the last 15 years by the people east of Last Chance. During the dry years, the people forget about the rich years. And when the wet years returned, they lost all memory of dry years. It was always that way. Eastern Colorado integrates the natural landscape with that of human occupation. And there are plenty of young people. Well, let's talk about those young people and the people. We've got big data on the people east of Last Chance. So here's a map of Colorado in the United States. The 16 counties, eastern Colorado, 30,000 square miles, about 150,000 people, 16 hospitals, 54 practices, 169 providers. We know about their hospitalizations for mental health conditions. Let's go over their hospitalizations for ambulatory care-sensitive conditions. In 2002, no, we're not going to go over that because we got a map for that. The red is badder, the pink is better. Eastern Colorado has higher hospitalizations for ambulatory care-sensitive conditions. We know what the population of eastern Colorado is, down to the county and the census tract. We can tell you the income and poverty levels, the education and crime, who graduated from high school, and how many violent crimes per 1,000 people. We know how many fruits and vegetables they eat. We know if they eat fast food. We know their mental health diagnoses, their suicide rate, and the number of providers in every small town. But big data is just a tiny bit about the people who choose to live east of Last Chance. Lee's hand shook as he filled the delicate cups. He drank down in one gulp. "Don't you see," he said, "the American Standard Translation orders men to triumph over sin, and you can call sin ignorance. The King James translation makes a promise, 'Thou shalt,' meaning that men will surely triumph over sin. But the Hebrew word, the word timshal, 'thou mayest,' that gives a choice. It may be the most important word in the world." So who are the people who choose to live east of Last Chance? The Community Advisory Council of the High Plains Research Network meets every quarter for 8 hours. They travel a total of 1,500 to 2,000 miles to meet in a central location somewhere east of Last Chance. They are not necessarily always friendly or easy to get along with. But by and large, they can laugh and smile. The High Plains Research Network Community Advisory Council came up with a mission statement. Who's here done a mission statement in your organization? The mission statement of the High Plains Research Network Community Advisory Council took all of 18 minutes to create. The guiding principle of the Community Advisory Council is to help inform and guide research and real patient experience and assure information garnered returns to and improves the quality of healthcare in individual rural communities. People in eastern Colorado choose to participate because it matters to them and their communities. They meet around a round or square table where all expertise is honored. They learn, they co-learn. There are no ugly questions except those clothed in condescension. If you want to work in eastern Colorado, don't condescend. Don't come visit. Come journey with us. If you don't have, I may not have a PhD, but I do have a DD 214. The values of eastern Colorado may not be a PhD, but their hard work and service to our country and our community. But it is also imperative to marry intellectual rigor and perseverance with interpersonal kindness. Thank you, Morris. So the Community Advisory Council and the people living east of Last Chance also are kind and generous. Community engagement works. Really? Nothing? Community engagement works. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. They sit and talk and share. They teach at the gun club about colon cancer prevention. And it's a well-balanced family with its conservatives and its radicals, its dreamers and its realists. But there's nothing sadder to me than an association held together by nothing but the glue of a postage stamp. So time spent together breaking bread and laughing and sharing stories makes east of Last Chance a paradise. So what do these people east of Last Chance actually do? There's a responsibility in being a person. It's more than just taking up space where air would be, says John Steinbeck in East of Eden. They participate. Community-based participatory research, many of you know about it. People living east of Last Chance embrace it. The participatory, cooperative, and co-learning process to create healthy communities, to create their healthy communities. Learning about high blood pressure and home blood pressure monitoring, or cancer survivorship. The community members do most of the speaking at our meetings. And they develop our priorities, our research questions, and our topics based on the needs of eastern Colorado. There is no cookbook to what they do. They live each day doing the work that they do, combining it with the work that we do to come up with fun things, and they innovate. When our food and clothing and housing are all born in the complication of mass production, mass method is bound to get into our thinking and to eliminate all other thinking. The Community Advisory Council and the people east of Last Chance don't let that happen. They innovate new and creative ways to get messages that matter to the people of eastern Colorado, using local resources like Jim Santamasso at the sale barn. Got polyps? Talk to your doctor. Since they're not healthcare providers, they move amongst the sectors in rural Colorado with ease, taking advantage of local farming and ranching expertise to bring things like this to the community to get people's attention. A farm auction flyer all about colon cancer and colon cancer prevention. By the end of the colon cancer project that they worked on, these 15 community members had engaged over 250 other community members to disseminate, because it's not just a small group, it's that small group integrating with the next small group and the next small group. No story has power, nor will it last, unless we feel it in ourselves that it is true and true of us. And so the Community Advisory Council, the people east of Last Chance, said, how do we make the story of colon cancer or asthma or medical home or hypertension our story? How do we tell it so that it's true for us? And they created the process called Boot Camp Translation that takes medical jargon and translates it into messages that are meaningful, that matter, and are actionable at the local community. They create products and toolkits. The asthma toolkit went to all the practices in eastern Colorado, and the community air program went out through schools using local football players and community members and volleyball teams to tell the message and the story about asthma that was their own story. The 12,000 was the number of people who have asthma in eastern Colorado, and it was a provocative message that the community wanted to get out. So they produced t-shirts that said the 12,000 to get people to start the conversation. They really wanted to use dust masks because people use dust masks to stay out of that wind that you saw earlier. But they discovered that dust masks aren't effective. And so they took advantage of that product in eastern Colorado and put in big, bold red letters, does not control asthma, and handed out 10,000 dust masks to get the message out that there are better ways to manage your asthma. And by the end of Asthma Toolkits and Community Air, almost 800 community members had participated in the rollout of Asthma Toolkits and Community Air. The direction of a big act will warp history, as we've seen this week. But probably all acts do the same in their degree, down to a stone stepped over the path, or the breath caught at the sight of a pretty view, or a fingernail nicked in the garden soil. Small acts will warp history in community. As seen here, after coming to NAPCRG in Vancouver, the Community Advisory Council said at the airport, and on the back of a NAPCRG program, wrote out the protocol for a project on childhood obesity called Eye on Health, in which they helped students in 4th and 5th grades identify the healthy and unhealthy behaviors in their life. And because they'd done so many toolkits, they decided that toolkits were pretty much last year. And for cancer survivorship, they thought an I Survive service manual was the way to go, that mimics the service manual you would find in your car or your truck, with a dashboard and the warning lights, going the extra miles. They produce movies and projects and products, or maybe it's really they direct movies, lights, camera, action. And they see. You're one of those rare people who can separate your observation from your preconception. You see what is where most people see what they expect. This came to a head when one of our members in a small group that included the head of the mental health center, said, "Centennial Mental Health is not a safe place." He didn't mean that it was dangerous to go there. He meant that it was stigmatizing, that you would not park your pickup truck in front of the mental health center for fear of the stigma and the impact that would have on your friends and family. They said, "We want to create safe venues for emotional expression in our community that move beyond the walls of either the primary care practice or the community health center or the integrated practice." They want to shift that out into the community and make each person in a rural community be the other person for somebody starting to suffer behavioral, mental, emotional, behavioral suffering. The people east of Last Chance inspire others. So they produced a home blood pressure monitoring program called Just Check It that has now been moved into the Center for African American Health in Denver and the Latino population in 5 Points. And the practices of Eastern Colorado. And they share, whether on the radio or the newspaper, at clubs or community fairs. They share their work. They never hoard or store. They disseminate and distribute their work throughout the region, the state, and the nation. And when it comes time to walk to raise awareness for cancer, they raise awareness for cancer by walking. And when it's time to celebrate, they dance. This is Puerto Rico, NAPCRG. Henry David Thoreau once said, "I travel far in Walden," and the people of Eastern Colorado travel far in Eastern Colorado. But they also travel far from Eastern Colorado to NAPCRG, to Keystone 4, to Pecory. They teach and share and present in Colorado and New York, Saskatchewan, and Puerto Rico. One day Samuel strained his back, lifting a bale of hay, and it hurt his feelings more than his back, for he could not imagine a life in which Sam Hamilton was not privileged to lift a bale of hay. The people living east of Last Chance keep their day jobs because that's what they do. And they would be offended or hurt if you called them researchers, if you said they had been co-opted by the academy. Because they're farmers and ranchers and school teachers. They're retired and students. They have small businesses. They're social workers. And they do their day jobs while still engaging in the work of the High Plains Research Network. Well, we did not create paradise in Eastern Colorado. The university did not bestow paradise. Researchers did not provide a definition and define paradise in Eastern Colorado. No, the High Plains Research Network is a choice that community members make. But perhaps all of our work is done east of Last Chance. We all face the sweat and toil, the weeds and vines that grow up around our work, whether it's in the urban university or the rural community health center, your practice-based research network, the African American community, the Latino community, the Asian community, your new grant, or God forbid, the failed grant, your clinical dilemmas in practice, those surveys and cluster randomized controlled trials, the late nights, the weekends, sometimes every weekend. Our work is often done east of Last Chance. After 2 years, we felt that we could address your 16 verses of the 4th chapter of Genesis. My old gentleman felt that these words were very important too. Thou shalt, and do thou. And this was the gold from our mining. Thou mayest. You have a choice. The old gentleman smiled and nodded and felt the years were well spent. Is East of Last Chance paradise? Is your research work paradise, or just the worst hard time? You choose. I'd like to thank this group of incredible choosers, and if you're on this list, would you please stand? The High Plains Research Network staff, Community Advisory Council, if you're here, would you please stand and show yourself, because there may be some. I knew that would get the applause at the end of the talk. Thank you all very much. We have a little bit of time for questions, and you can ask those questions of me, or you can ask them of our Community Advisory Council and the people that choose to live east of Last Chance. There's microphones if you have any questions or comments.
Denise Campbell, Chair, University of Alberta. Thank you very much for an awesome talk. I have a question for you and the board. I've been reading a lot about sticky ideas because I think our work only matters if it actually changes lives for people, and you guys seem to have the secret sauce on that. So I'm curious if you could give us 3 pearls from your experience about how you had such success in getting such creative ideas to spread.
So I think the question was to give 3 pearls about how this has become sticky.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. The monitors here don't have the sound, so I think that was the question. But I'm gonna give a shot at this question, and our Community Advisory Council and people can stand up and change this if it's not right. But I believe one of the first things that success in community requires windshield time. And that means you have to get out of your office in your academic center or your practice and go out into the community. You have to sit behind the windshield of a car and drive out. For us, it's a lot of windshield time. It's hundreds of miles. For those in urban, it may only be right down the street, but it still requires you to get out of the practice or out of the administrative office and go out into the community. So windshield time, I think, is the first thing. 2, I would say that it's a dance between what funders will pay for and what community wants done. And there is a dance there, and that requires relationship and long-term sort of ability to shift and share power. And if a funder only wants to fund something on colon cancer, as the Centers for Disease Control wanted to do, does the community care enough about it to invest in that or not? And our community members have said no to many an idea. They've said yes to some from researchers, and they've also bubbled up ideas and tasked us with getting funded. So it's a dance between and a balance between those 2 competing interests. And then the third thing I would say is that it needs to be something that matters to the community. The ideas that our community members tend to not want to do are things that they're just not that interested in. And maybe we don't have the right people at the table. It might matter to somebody else, but for this group, they choose the things that matter to them, and they then will invest their time and energy. Anybody from the community want to tag on to that? Sergio, you want to say anything?
One of the things that keeps bringing me back is that we have seen that there is value in doing what we do. Taking the information that you guys have provided for us and bringing it back to our communities has truly, I think, helped us grow our relationships and helps us to become I think that whole thinking of a patient-centered home, well, it's not only in the home, it's in the community. It starts all around us. So there's a lot of value there for that.
So I was going to ask a question too, but first I wanted to point out to everyone what Jack did. What a researcher. When Denise asked her question, he has his research notebook up there and he wrote the question down the notebook. That's amazing. But so Sergio and other folks, I see you at these meetings for years. What's it like coming to these meetings? Like the first time, I bet it's just overwhelming, like for all of us. But like you come back, you keep coming back. Like what's it like?
Well, to be honest, I always feel that we are just a little unique because coming back is like family reunion time. So we do only meet quarterly, but it's a full day's worth of work. I mean, we do emails and different things like that. But we continue to come back because, again, we know that our work matters. We are the voice of our community. And if not us, then who?
Could you dig a little deeper? Like, what's it actually like to come to these meetings for you?
I think it is overwhelming at first. Sometimes we go to meetings and we hear things that we don't understand, but we always have, this time we had the opportunity to share our community advisory council in one of the sessions, and so I think that it helps us understand that, you know, we do matter, and so maybe we don't understand a lot of the research things that we're coming into, but we're still being able to take what we've learned and teach other people that. And so I think that we keep coming back because we know we have that opportunity to teach other people, and we have the opportunity to learn things that we've never learned before, so.
Thank you very much. I was impressed by the line about the pickup truck parked in front of the mental health care center and the how striking that could be for stigma. What has the project been able to do to make safe places for mental health care?
So the question is about safe venues for emotional expression, and our community members went through a very long process of appreciative inquiry, identifying successful stories where people accessed mental and behavioral health, not necessarily in the, well, we left it open to that. And the stories came back that people were impacted by other people. And in fact, there's this sort of theme that bubbled up in successful stories around mental and emotional behavioral health, that there was this, quote, other person. And it tended to not be a family member. It was a coworker or a teacher or a friend or a colleague. And out of that, the group came up with a set of questions that are essentially a conversational PHQ that is done in the community. So there's 5 questions. You can all learn. Can I teach them, community members? Can I give them the 5 questions? Okay, they've agreed to. You're going to now know the conversational gravity assist. That is, this will help you be the other person to change the trajectory of somebody who's suffering mental, emotional, behavioral distress. So, Tom, how are you? Question number 1. No, really, how are you? Number 2, you don't seem like yourself. I haven't seen you at bowling. You seem grumpy. You've been agitated lately. Is it the board getting you down? No. Trump, okay. Number 4, how are things at home or work? And number 5, can we talk about this? Can I open up a dialogue about this? So those are the 5 questions, and we're not trying to create paraprofessionals or psychologists or counselors. It's really around, as our community members said, this is the way we used to interact. This is the way we always used to do it. But now, because of privacy and people's attention, we just don't do this, and we should need to get back to doing this. There's two additional questions that are optional. One is self-disclosure. I remember when my son went to college, I suffered a lot. I was depressed for 6 months, and it really took me a while to get through that. And then 7, how the hell do I get out of this? This person's really in distress. I need some help. How do I get this person to actual acute care? So those are the 7 questions of the conversational gravity assist, or the COMET, we call it, changing our mental and emotional trajectory. So that's what came of the parking lot pickup truck conversation.
Did that result in greater treatment seeking? Or have you gotten
We're
there
too
yet?
early in that.
Thank you.
If you're a funder and you'd like to do a randomized controlled trial on this, or the chair of my department, or frankly, the chair of any department, I'll take your money. I'm not picky.
Carol Herbert from Western. Thank you for a very elegant presentation and a demonstration of how relational our work is, and how willing we need to be to stand on the same ground as those with whom we work, on even ground, and to make the ground as even as it can be. I know that your work has led to a more equitable environment for health care. What I wanted to ask is, particularly for people who are in urban environments, how do they define community? How do they engage in a way that will allow them to interact in this sort of approach?
So the question is, how does this work in urban? And, well, I'm going to turn this question over to somebody, I think, because I'll give a short answer, but then there's another person sitting right where I can see him, and so I'm going to call on him. But community can be lots of things, as we all know. And, you know, in rural communities, it's really easy to draw a circle around it. So, and, you know, you saw the maps that I put up. We draw a circle around the 16 counties of eastern Colorado. If you live or work in that 16 counties, you're part of the High Plains Research Network. So it's easy to do that. Now, engaging the people in those communities is where the transactional counting of big data turns into the relational piece of little data, and data that matters. So I think it's still possible in urban, but I think it's really finding a few people who then help you define what that community, whether it's a practice or a city block or an ethnic group, and then let that group sort of self-define who they want at the table and who needs to be there. But I would like Dawn to just say, you do this in urban, and I'd be curious if you have some thoughts about how to do community in an urban. Sorry for putting you on the spot, but that's what happens when KU beats Duke.
Yeah. I don't know.
Had to get it in.
Are Ken or Marcy in the room? Because they could probably speak to this better than I can. I'll take a stab, but I think, you know, community is about. It's anywhere where people have a shared sense of the future and the need to work collectively to bring that future into being. And that works in urban. It can work in a lot of different places. And I think for the folks that are on my CareNet Patient Advisory Council, it translates.
Over here.
Hi, Chet Fox from Buffalo, transitioning from being professor at University of Buffalo to become a chief medical officer in Medicaid ACO.
Good luck with that.
So the first is a beg. Those toolkits for asthma and blood pressure looked great. 1, how can we get them? And 2, would you mind if we modified them for inner city urban? That's the question. I also wanted to make a comment. Wanted to thank you personally and your group for the leadership that you showed in patient engagement, being a full 10 years ahead of, where PCORI was, and being able to lead the way. The work of the boot camp and others have really inspired a lot of us. So I just wanted to thank you for that. The question I had was, for those in the university, how much time did it take to you to get over the inertia to get this started? And who paid for your windshield time?
Yeah, I think you all heard that question. So the High Plains Research Network started in 1997 with funding from the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation and supported by two generous chairs of family medicine, first Larry Green for a few years and then Frank DeGree, who provided support despite initial skepticism that this would work. And yet he supported that in a way that made the windshield time possible. And so I have to do a thank you to both Larry and Frank for the time and energy that they've spent sort of making sure that there was a little bit of protected. So those chairs out there or research directors, engaging communities and patients out there is not free. It comes at a cost. And if you're not willing to have that cost, you probably shouldn't go down the road towards that because it won't last. And so there are some costs. We try to get them in grants. Colorado's an eat what you kill state, like most places, with that sort of buffer of support from the department to fill in the little gaps. Yes, you can have, I'm getting nods, you can have the toolkits. You can have the Just Check It toolkits. You can modify them. They've been modified by many people. They are in the public domain. Would love for you to pay us for them or something.
Actually, I may be able to do that.
Yeah, baby.
The difference between being the CMO in an organization versus a university, we actually can't, you give us a reasonable charge and we will pay you for them.
We can give you both a reasonable and an aspirational charge. Ken?
When you were talking about community, I thought about that for a moment, and my community is so vast. I have a church community, a Bronco community, I have a Pace community, and as they intermingle, it keeps drawing me back into the center. I've been involved with Pace for 12 years, no pay, and I keep coming back. What do I get out of it? I get an education out of it. I help somebody. I'm smarter. I don't know what else to say.
So can you say your name and where you're from?
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Kenneth Daly. I'm from Denver, Colorado. And I've been involved with the PACE situation for 12 years. My doctor suggested that I join, and I didn't know why I was joining. I didn't know what I had to add. What did I bring to the situation? But as time goes on, I am the better person for it. Thank you.
Ken's a very active member of the Patient Advisory Council for the Colorado Urban Research Network. So it's possible to do in urban as well. I think we have a question over here.
Yeah, my name is Kate Vickery from Hennepin County Medical Center in Minneapolis. I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about the Institutional Review Board and how the High Plains Research Network has worked with your IRB to help them understand. And then when you're talking about specific things like community members collecting stories, doing appreciative inquiry, is that research? Is that not research? How do you guys navigate that?
Yeah. So IRB, Institutional Review Board, and Human Subject Protection. So it's very interesting. Our community members are co-researchers. They're not study subjects. They're part of our research team. And they sort of chuckle when the academy, when the university says, you need to learn how to protect study subjects like your neighbors and you. They sort of think there's sort of some irony in the community being sort of questioned about their care for their own people. So once we got past that sort of irony, initially the IRB was going to make all of our folks take the full IRB training course, day or two, a lot of hours. They'd have to get a personal identifier number through the university system to be able to take that class, and a couple of them did, and really it just wasn't going to work. And it's not probably appropriate for community members to be forced to take a course learning about the rules of starting device trials. So we worked closely with our community members and our IRB to develop a training course for the community members that uses the 3 primary values of the Belmont Report. The community members helped create that course. It's about a 90-minute course. We go through, we ask folks to read a summary of the Belmont Report, and then we had a conversation about the values of beneficence and justice and fairness. And we threw in HIPAA, because our IRB does the HIPAA training and privacy as well. And then every time, so sometimes our Community Advisory Council functions as advisors, and sometimes their role and their function is as co-researchers. And when they function as co-researchers, we stop the meeting, we reiterate the values and the principles of the Belmont Report, we pull down the cone of silence for privacy, and we dig in and review data and promise to be respectful and private and keep what happens at the CAC at the CAC. That has worked very well. Our IRB has been very happy with that. It means that they don't have to worry about training 100 community members in a course that may not be meaningful to them. It makes sure that our community members understand sort of the roles and responsibilities of being a researcher when they participate in that activity, and would be happy to share that as well.
Thank you.
Our IRB has been very friendly to this notion. I know that not all IRBs are. Any other questions? Oh.
This is on you. I have a question for Ned and Merritt. You said something to me yesterday that I can't stop thinking about. You've kept your day jobs, you're still ranchers, but you've become seriously invested as investigators and authors and producers of knowledge that actually helps the health of the people around where you live. And the more and what you said yesterday was that the more seriously invested you become as leaders in a research effort, the more difficult it is, or the more compromised you feel, or the more you have to contend with the reality that you're on this side of the river. You're not as surely a member of the community in your capacity as a researcher as you were, and you're having to deal with that. I don't know how to think about that. I don't know where to put my lever under the stone to move that. Is this a problem with our historical insensitivity and exploitation of communities, and you're sort of enduring the legacy of previous bad experiences? Is this a bridgeable divide? Help me think about this some more. I can't stop thinking about the unintended consequence of your rising to a very beautiful and very effective new role. I hate to put you on the spot in front of 1 million people, but shit, I don't know what to do with this.
So, Frank, honestly, I think that this room needs to weigh in on that question. There's sometimes a question of authenticity, and Ned and I have talked about this for many, many years. So I'm Merritt Felzine, and and as many of you know, we've been part of this for a very long time, going on 13, 15 years. And while we feel like our day jobs and where we live and the work that we do makes us, we just are who we are. We are our community members and we live our authentic life. But sometimes there is a question of, well, you know too much about research. You've been involved in too many research projects. You've spent too many hours at the university. You've served on too many committees. You can speak IRB language. Are you truly still authentic? Can I still lend an authentic community voice to the research that we do? And while I think I absolutely can, and I think that we all speak from a very, very honest and true source, and that we are still very grounded in our day jobs. That's why we keep them, and notice that nobody is paying any of us to be employed at the university. We haven't been co-opted in that way. I do think that there is a struggle there, and I don't know what the answer is. All we can do is just trying to stay true to what it is that we want to do for our communities. But Frank, it's an interesting conversation. I would encourage all of you guys to really think about that. Anybody else want to weigh in? My group? Others?
Hi, my name is Julie Peterson, and I'm one of the Health Policy Fellows at the Graham Center right now. And I'll start off with just saying thank you. I've actually been kind of emotional listening to your talk today. I grew up in a southern West Virginia town of 2,700 people, and for the past week have heard my community and the people that I love the most in the world characterized in such awful ways. So first off, just thank you for the work that you're doing. And all I can say is I share a little bit of what you're talking about, that I'm sort of living the life of this urban liberal academic right now, still having a passionate heart for rural America, and it's almost precisely the fact that I left and got this education that has diminished my authenticity in my own community. So I don't know that I have a great answer for you, other than it's something that I think a lot of us who want to work in this community have to just trust ourselves that we have remained authentic, while also making sure that we keep an ear to the people that we're trying to serve, and acknowledging that I'm not there. I haven't lived there for 10 years, so maybe I still don't know exactly as much as I thought I did. So.
I just want to say one other thing, thank you. Ken mentioned earlier about why he keeps coming back to the table, and he talks about how much he has learned and how fun the work is, and how it sort of feeds this sense of curiosity. And we talk about this too. So Ned and I, we're a husband-wife team. We've done this for a long time. But part of this work is just really fun. And so we're learning. We're growing. We are expanding our horizons. And guess what we're doing for our neighbors and our friends and our families? We're teaching, and we're bringing good things back to the community. So there's also that piece of it, is that there's this reciprocal side that by being involved, we're also expanding the resources within our community. So I'm going to hand this to Don.
Yeah, so Don Neese again from Colorado. It's a great question, Frank, and I think it gets at one of the things that we talk about a lot when we're doing this work, which is representation and categories, and am I at the table as a researcher? With all of that stuff, are community members there with their stuff from their neighborhoods, or are we there as people? And one of the question I was going to ask Jack was, there's a piece of this work that I think is really, really important that goes against the grain of the academy, which is humility. And being willing to step outside of that safe space where we have the answers. And that's not just I mean, that's not unique to the academy, but we're pretty expert at it. Anything to reflect on there, Jack?
I'm J.C. Karika, and I'm part of the CAC. I'm also an administrator for a rural integrated clinic, focuses mostly on mental health, and there's a common theme I keep hearing here, and how do you stay rural, how do you stay connected? You know, for me, I try to have a balance between how much time I spend in my community, but also how much time I have to spend on the I-25 corridor to try to make policy change. And it is a very difficult balance. I still get up in the morning at 7:30 and go have coffee with my farmers, you know, but I also see the disconnect. They always tease me, oh, what's going on today, Doc? What's happening in your world, Doc? And I said, well, first I've got up and I set water. I got hay to cut tomorrow. So I'm trying to always keep that balance. The one thing I would caution is that I appreciate Jack making the comment about window time. If you want to invest in us, invest in us. I was really offended about 6 weeks ago. We got a really nice grant, and I won't speak to the details, and we were flattered by receiving it. And part of the grant was that they were going to come down and do a site visit. And 3 days before the site visit, they called and rescheduled and said, can we do this by phone? We didn't realize how far it was out there. And I said, now wait a second. It's okay for us to travel that distance all the time to meet with you, and you want to invest in us and do research on us, but you want to do all your research by phone. That really burned me, and that really burned our agency. Yesterday, I got another call that we received another nice grant. And the first thing I heard was, will you participate with Colorado State University in being a research region? And my comment back was, are you going to get in your car and drive down and get to know us? Because if you're not willing to get to know us, we're not willing to be your guinea pigs. And I want to stand firm with that in our rural communities. And I think that's one way we can stay connected is by standing firm on our beliefs and saying, you want to know us, get to know us.
Jack?
Oh, hi, Viv.
Hi. I just wanted, Viv Ramsden, I'm from the University of Saskatchewan. I just want to follow up on Merritt's comment because there's a lot of chairs in the room, and one of the things that academics need to be thinking about as well is we too become part of the community. It's a different dynamic and it's a different framework, but we are actually engaged in a new world for ourselves as academics. And we then become part of that community just as the community members become part of our community. I've been working in inner city Saskatoon and rural areas of the province for a number of years, and one of the things that the community members say is that window shield time is absolutely critical to getting this done. But more importantly, our academic administrative people need to see that we're no longer who we were.
Thank you, Viv. I am no longer who I was 20 years ago.